So once again, my name is Nitin Chandra Nandekar. Currently, I am the Regional Managing Director for MediaReach OMD. I have been here in Nigeria and West Africa for more than 15 years now. So a lot of people call me Indo-African. So that's where I am. Apart from what I am doing in my life also, I have experience of more than 23 years of media experience working in different continent, whether it is Asia, Africa, even I have spent my time in Middle East, and I'm bringing that knowledge to Nigeria and West Africa. So apart from me, I have two or three rather gentlemen who's going to talk for today's session. So let me introduce to them. I'm very happy to introduce Professor Uchenna Uzo. We call it Prof. Uche. He is the Professor of Marketing Director of Africa Retail Academy at Lagos Business School. And he is also a Faculty Director of LBS. And he has been receiving several awards for teaching excellence in Africa. So Professor Uche, welcome to this forum.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Niti. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Uche. The next person is very important person, Mr. Matt Hammond. And Mr. Matt is currently a regional director for West and Central Africa of one of the biggest research company, Geopol. Mark has a wide experience of working in several countries. I personally know Mark. He is a very genuine person and he likes to interact with different nationality, different kind of people with different culture. And he has been working or interacting with a lot of multinational, starting from MTN to Unilever to Coca-Cola, and very vast experience. So I'm very happy to introduce Matt. Matt, welcome to this forum once again.
Thank you, Nitin. It's great to be here. And good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. And the last but not the least, we have very dynamic and young Nigerian talent. I would say Mr. Emmanuel. And Emmanuel is working with us, with MediaReach OMD from last 10 years. Currently, he's a business unit director. And also, he has been awarded not only at the local level, but also at the global and regional level in terms of strategy and planning and communication. So he is one of the fantastic speaker we have today. So welcome to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, you can hear me?
Thank you very much, Nitin, and thank you very much, everyone. It's good to be here.
Okay, now I would like to straight go to the objective of this today's forum. Once again, I'm very much delighted to welcome all of you for this year's edition. And we have themed it as top trends in 2023, media, consumer and markets. And like I mentioned, and we are doing this in partnership with prestigious Lagos Business School and very reputed research agency Geopol. As far as MediaReach OMD concerned, we are the leading media agency network in West and Central Africa. And also in the globe, OMD is the #1 agency. And our goal in West and Central Africa has always been to empower to our clients with the relevant data and insight. Whenever there is a data comes, we are the first agency to deliver for our clients. And what we do in providing relevant data and insight to make better decision faster. And this mantra is what drives our business and can be seen in initiatives like Bespoke Media Facts Book. We started Media Facts Books. I'm sure a lot of people are aware in the industry. First Media Facts Book we published in 2001, if I'm not wrong. So almost from last 22 years, we have been publishing the Media Facts Books. And I must say that a lot of people call it as Media Bible. when it comes to MediaFax books. And most of the agencies or competitors, clients, publications, they refer MediaFax books as most authentic data in the market. And after that, last year, we had a discussion with Professor Uche and the LBS management, and they are also very eager to have partnership with us. And that is where we've been partner from last year. And we conducted one webinar at the end of last year. So we also predicted certain trends for 2023, and a lot of trends what we forecasted is in reality now. So apart from this year, what we thought, we should also extend our partnership to one of the top research agency, and that is where we choose Geopol. So when we had a discussion with Matt and his team, they were very much interested and eager to contribute. So thank you very much for that. So likewise now, again, I hope this session, as we start, because not taking much time, I would invite Professor Uche and Matt to briefly talk about them before I hand over to Emmanuel. Professor Uche.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you once again. Welcome, everyone. Lagos Business School is really very delighted to be part of this partnership. As you know, LBS is currently number 41 in the world in executive education, according to Financial Times, and is a leading business school in Africa. And for us, this partnership and this event is of strategic importance because it's very linked to our overall mission of developing socially and ethically responsible managers that will lead Africa's development. And we believe that this partnership with MediaReach and Geopol will help to extend thought leadership in the continent, will also support the idea of projecting and democratizing research that is useful for managers in this part of the world. And also we believe that LBS's contribution to this platform is a way of demonstrating our commitment to service in society. So overall, we believe that this is a partnership that will take us very far. And once again, I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Uche. Now I invite Matt to just introduce about Geopol, and he can highlight some few important points. Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Nitin. Yes, Geopol, we're delighted to be involved in this project in the second year. We have a long partnership with OMD in Nigeria and going back several years. More widely, Geopol's work in Nigeria goes back about 8 years. We have worked in a variety of sectors in Nigeria and more widely across the region. We're an agency, a full-service market research house headquartered out of Nairobi and the USA, which is consistently delivering top quality data to everyone from international NGOs to leading brands, organizations, certainly, and primarily making use of the mobile phone and the very large database of survey respondents that we have across the developing world. Yeah, I think that's it's from our side. I think we're also delighted to contribute to the furthering of insights in the industry, the media industry, more widely in Nigeria. It's a passion project of ours, and we publish a lot of blogs and a lot of insights, and delighted to collaborate on initiatives like this.
Thank you very much, Matt. Now, before I hand over to Emmanuel, one point I would like, or I request all the participants and audience, if you have any questions, so please drop your questions in Q&A session. If you have any comments, you can put it on chat. But if you have any particular question and you would like to ask any one of the speaker or panelists, so kindly put your questions into Q&A session. Okay. Now, like I mentioned, we started this webinar series from last year, November 2021, and it was a wonderful webinar. session we had. So what I would like to do, I would like to invite Emmanuel, and he will quickly brief us that some of the trend he will highlight for last year, and then we will take it forward. Emmanuel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to be here with us all. On the screen here is the agenda for today. Just to take you through the trends that we do. So the format is pretty simple. We present data as facts, what we have observed and noticed, announce the trend, and then, of course, we look at the implications for the different stakeholders that we are focused on. For the trend presentation for last year, we're proud to say that we've recorded well above 80% accuracy level for most of the predictions. We had predicted that media investment was going to increase coupled with inflation, and that has happened, as we can see, looking at the available data. We also predicted a strong convergence on online and offline channels, which we saw a lot of that happening this year across the different dynamics of media. And we also predicted that we would have a lot more digital-only brands coming to the offline channel for advertising for the purpose of building credibility for their brands and authenticity. And you can see that from even the major sponsorships, the World Cups, Big Brother Naija, and all of that. Lots of tech brands leveraged on traditional channels for that. And then we had a bit of revelation regarding Gen Z's media consumption last year, which interestingly was also something that we saw play out this particular year. Then we talked about digital adoption likely to grow. That happened as well. Second screen interactivity, terrestrial viewership, amongst others. And we thought it was important to bring it back again so that, for those that were not around last year, you can take a look at it. We track, our trends to be sure and, that it delivers as promised. And we guarantee that coming into 2023 trends, the standard is also even going to be much higher now that we have, strategic partnerships with Geopol and LBS as well. So at this point, I'll just want to hand over now to Professor Uche to take us through the first set of trends for 2023, after which Matt will speak, and then I will come to round off with the remaining part of the trend. So over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I'll be discussing 3 trends right now. I'll start with the elections. We all know that in Nigeria at this time, this is the election season, and it's really quite a dramatic election in terms of the way trends are moving and things are evolving. Advertising spend, as we see it, for 2023 is likely to be higher than what it was in 2019, but not as high as what it was in 2015. We also envisage some level of GDP growth. I don't know if you've been checking the trends, you will see that post-elections, we tend to go into a recession. But we see this time some level of growth. We also know what's happening because of the new Naira, which has been introduced. That may have positive or not so positive effects on the elections. There's also high regulation, greater regulatory scrutiny from the regulatory bodies for advertising, looking closely at how things are going to get done in this election. Next slide, please. And so what we see is that 2023 elections will challenge typical norms, the typical way of doing things, for a couple of reasons, which I will explain now. First, on the media side, we are going to see that digital media will dominate, and that social media content will be what drives the discourse around the polity. People are going to be looking more at social media than traditional channels say. And that will create a challenge because of fake news. We all know what fake news does on traditional media. Regulation will be tighter as well because of this. And we foresee some kind of diversification in the channels used, out of home becoming a bit more dominant post-election, and influencer marketing being a bit more risky to use. So on the consumer side, what we envisage is, and this is already very clear from the trends we're seeing, more active youth participation in political affairs next year, and therefore greater apathy for content, political content that they don't regard as being credible. And so those who will grab more mind share will be those who have credible messages. And at the same time, we will see consumers moving in the direction of other forms of content like entertainment and sport that fits into their aspiration. And so those more on the market side, what we envisage and what we see here is that while there's going to be a reduction in spending by brands because of the media clutter, more forward-looking brands are not going to stop investing in advertising. They're going to pay attention to building their brands because they are thinking more long-term as opposed to short-term activations. And so those who are going to play to win will be those focusing on experiential activities which address passion points of customers. And we think this is what is going to dominate how things go on in the next year. Next slide, please. Moving on to another trend. So we all know what inflation is doing to our market. It's really, really high, above 20%. And in fact, the rate of inflation right now is the worst in, I would say the highest in the last 17 years of Nigeria's history. There are many factors affecting it. The Russia-Ukraine war has its own, fact, the elections, the devaluation of the Naira, the Japa syndrome, that migration of people leaving the country, and some of the policies around the CBN and government that have affected this high rate of inflation. Moving to the next slide, please. And therefore, what we find interesting though is that even though we anticipate high inflation and possibly even a bit higher than it is now, advertising investment is still going to grow. Still going to grow, maybe not as much as it grew year on year, if you look at 2021 and 2022. And we're going to see media inflation. We're going to see media inflation across the different channels because of that high cost of operations. It's also interesting if you see here what is happening to above the line spend. And it's interesting to see that betting is actually the industry, the betting industry is the top spender when it comes to above the line advertising, followed by the telcos, and then the food and beverages, even before banking. And way down there is financial institutions. So that's really interesting, the way that some non-traditional industries are actually investing more aggressively in advertising. Next slide. And so the trend we see here is that advertising investments are expected to increase despite high inflation, which is not what you would typically expect in an inflationary situation. So what does this imply? What does this mean for us? On the media side, well, there's going to need to be really more reflection around what the return on investment as a result of this spending, this high media inflation is going to be as the economy worsens and inflation increases. So wise investments would be advisable. We're going to see more of that. On the consumer side, the consumer is going to be more discerning, more demanding, more price sensitive. And so more short-term promotional campaigns that are well targeted will be useful in certain markets. And the apathy is not going to go away, the media apathy. And so a level of creativity is required to engage the consumers in terms of content. On the market side, it's all going to be about more strategic and long-term thinking. It's going to be about really looking at how to direct our planning, our media planning and advertising planning across regions, because Nigeria is not one market. And so different regions are going to behave and respond differently. And as inflation bites, there's going to be a greater need for cost efficiency, which, as we know, is something that is needed to survive in this market. Next slide, please. Moving on to the third trend here. So 63% of Nigerians are actually multidimensionally poor. And a good share of these poor Nigerians reside in northern Nigeria. And this is something that is serious, worrisome, and of course, something needs to be done. And we don't see this changing next year. But the interesting thing is that 80% of Nigerian consumers who admit that there's inflation are going to be working in the direction of reprioritizing what they spend on, going for more discretionary spending, focusing on survival-based items. But the interesting trend here, which I want to highlight, is how optimistic this same segment of poor Nigerian consumers are about their incomes rising. Despite the poverty, there is a high level of aspiration and expectation that in a short span of time, the tide is going to turn in 6 months in favor of having a higher level of income. So there's a high level of optimism in the economy. Next slide. And so what we see here is that though the viable consumer market in Nigeria will shrink further, hope, optimism, high aspirations will always sell. And I think this is something that is important to take note of. What does this imply for stakeholders? Well, on the media side, it's really interesting because this is going to create a higher level of competition as investments increase. The temptation is going to be to focus on consumers with higher disposable income, to use platforms like cable and network platforms to sell, and to go for special forms of subscription-based content. But while doing that, while that may happen, we need to remember that the consumers, even if they are poorer, doesn't mean that they are less demanding. Having a high aspiration only just means that the consumers are going to be more demanding of brands to deliver on their mandates for every single naira that is spent. And so what we are likely to see here is that as the economic realities bite harder, Nigerian consumers are sure to adapt to survival by moving in the direction of less emotional to more value-based products. On the market side, I think that this is more a call for brand managers to really step back and focus on what really matters. On the one hand, there will need to be some re-strategizing around regions. Nigeria is not one market, so how you speak to the northern consumer that is highly aspirational and mostly poor, it's going to be different from how you speak to the southern market. And alongside that, the kind of industries or products that you sell your messages through might evolve. So sports betting, loans, mobile money may end up having a stronger face next year. But then big brands would need to rethink, would need to be innovative. Some may move in the direction of sachetization, breaking what they sell into smaller units to address what is happening. But in the end, loyalty will become something that is elusive and subject for legacy brands. I think that is my last trend. I hope you have found it useful and enjoyable and that we draw meaningful insights from it. Thank you very much.
Matt, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks again, Prof. That was very informative. So the fourth trend, we start to see in the data in the following areas, and this chart is on the left is from AMPS. Over the past 9 years, you can see the steady rise of internet and the decline of TV, radio, and in particular the press. So there's no sign of this increasing internet penetration, internet reach slowing down anytime soon. And as the cost of devices comes down and the cost of data comes down, we're starting to see more and more access to the digital world in the Nigerian population. And at the same time, we're seeing increases in within TV in the cable and satellite sector. So GoTV, DSTV, StarTimes, the others all showing consistent growth, which is interesting because the cost of a month subscription to these services is going up quite dramatically, and it's very much rising along with the rest of the inflationary pressures that Professor talked about. So it's a little bit of a contradiction here. If, people are feeling the pinch on their wallets, times are tough, and yet more money is going into these services. And if we can go to the next slide, there's potentially some indication of some of the factors that are driving this. So this is data from the US, and as it's interesting to see how we always expect things to happen in markets like the US first and then come to countries like Nigeria, but increasingly the gap or the lag between one and the other happening is closing up. As across Africa, we're seeing this leapfrogging of technology to bypass a lot of the intermediary activities and go straight to what the developed world, inverted commas, is doing. So at a global and developed world level, you can see the massive increase in the amount of content being streamed from streaming sites. It accounts for about a third of all the TV viewership in the USA, and you can see it's coming from a variety of streaming sites or streaming services. That's not wildly out of line with what we see in the research in Nigeria that we do with OMD. Same sort of overall figures. And that's all driven by mobile, and it's increasingly and very much driven as well by youth. 16 to 34s spend 7 times more time on online video streaming and gaming platforms than older people do. So there's also then the audio platforms to consider. Spotify and YouTube Music and all of those are also very, very popular and growing very dramatically, especially with the younger generation. Next slide. So really what sits behind that, we kind of casually talk about internet access growing, and we kind of almost talk about it as an end unto itself. But what internet access does is it opens up a wider range of choice of content. And ultimately it's content, which is what all these people are looking for. Increased access to technology, or better access to technology, lower cost of ownership, lower data costs, all of those provide, they're the reason why people can access all of this different content, and why the viewership is fragmenting as much as it is, but it doesn't tell us why they do. And why they do is because they are, there's an endless thirst for content, and everyone wants their own content. So it's all about choice. And wherever the choice is being offered that tailors most to the consumer's needs, that's where they're going to go. So what are the implications then of let's look at the next slide. While we're on the next slide, I think it's important to understand it's not just about online, it's also about the offline and the sort of traditional TV channels as well. We're approaching the digitization of TV, where we'll see a much wider proliferation. I'll talk about it a little bit under media. Much more competition between channels for content themselves, and we see how it's all about, and touch on some of the in some of the next slides, how it's really the shows and the engagements that drive the attention. So that pipeline of content becomes crucial, and really. And a theme that we'll see, I think, throughout a lot of the trends is that the consumer and the audience from a media perspective is increasingly in charge. They get to decide what they consume and when. They don't get media fed to them anymore. They can decide exactly what they want to consume and how they want to consume it. And increasingly, they'll be able to choose how they want to be advertised to as well. So from a market perspective, it's going to be, in that context, incredibly difficult to build reach. If you look at how radio stations work, a lot now in terms of it being very difficult to reach a large population with a single small radio station, or even if you've got 20 of them, it's going to be the same with your different TV platforms, both online and sort of traditional, as well as satellite. So then you've of course got to consider the way that people are using the different video platforms together. So video stacking. So it becomes very important, and it's very to really focus on the content and consider, for example, tying in the sort of the content and the media owners. So owned assets, for example, Ndani TV, owned by GT Bank, provides that sort of captive audience or a direct pipeline to an audience, which is something I think which is going to take a far bigger share of the market next year. Let's go to the next slide. But we're going to talk a little bit about Gen Z, and we saw how some of the data we're seeing in the online video space is being driven very much by Gen Z. Gen Z, of course, people born since 1996. So we hear a lot of talk about them. Here's some of the sort of typical data that you see. I'm not going to talk about it in great length because I think we all know that Gen Z is very digitally savvy. Spending a lot of time on social media, and that's kind of almost within expectation. When you start to go down a little bit into what sort of social media, what exactly are they doing, it's interesting to see in the figures on the right here from for social media and for TikTok. So 2020 to 2021, we've heard a bit about the rise of TikTok. 54% of the new usage and the connection in terms of creating content was on TikTok. So it's become this this generation hub for the content that I was just talking about. If you look at who's on TikTok, it's 18 to 24, very heavily skewed. Interestingly, quite female as well. So we're seeing the rise of the TikTok video as something we need to think about as a TV channel in many ways. So let's take a look at the next slide. And because they're content creators, and at least familiar with content creation and have friends who do it, and I actually passed by on the street yesterday, some kids shooting TikTok videos, and I felt so old as I kind of stepped around them and tried not to get in the way, but obviously I had no idea what they were. I didn't understand their vibe at all. They looked at me funny. They're very much driven when it comes to how they consume or what they're looking for from their advertising, very much driven by trust. Creativity is important. They are inundated or in a very sort of creative space, but they're inundated with so much messaging and so many brands trying to talk to them, and they're such a hot property right now that and again, as we saw in the past few slides, they're in the driving seat. So they get to choose and are increasingly choosy about what they trust and what they don't. So for example, you have a look there, I don't like ads that try to trick me into clicking. I like ads that disruptive or distracting. So very, very selective about what sort of marketing messages they receive. If you have a look on the right there in terms of product purchase influences, TikTok videos, Instagram ads, influencer posts, those social media, particularly the TikTok videos, coming through as a very strong source for really sort of driving those purchase decisions. Let's go to the next slide. So the insight or the trend here we're seeing is that it's going to get more and more difficult to reach Gen Zs with your traditional channels. It's not that they're going to stop watching TV altogether, but it's going to be far harder to reach them with a single channel or even a combination of traditional channels. We need to think in terms of online streaming. We need to think in terms of social media, and this is not limited to Nigeria. This is across the whole region. So what are the implications? We need new tech, we need new channels, we need new strategies. it's a very highly creative audience, so we need to engage creatively with them, and that means creative content. So the value for authenticity, trust, and inclusivity, that explains why they respond well to user-generated content, although there's a saturation point potentially coming where it's going to get harder and harder for users to cut through the clutter and communicate that authenticity and trust. It's going to become much more competitive. The first person to unpack a product and talk about it was cut through really well, but now everyone's doing it. It's not that they don't completely mistrust traditional media, but they want to have more of a role in how they consume it. In terms of the market, it's if you're dealing with massive fragmentation, so it's not going to work to do a one-size-fits-all approach. We need to try and understand what makes Gen Z unique. We put a lot of I think we're still kind of to some extent thinking in terms of millennials, and as an industry, we need to move faster in terms of understanding Gen Z. And that means a lot of research and a lot of in-depth understanding. As the Lagos Business School, one of the Lagos Business School videos mentioned, really engaging with your marketing and your creative teams. Okay, let's have a look at the next trend or the next data. Right, we talked a little bit about the rise in internet usage in Nigeria, which so again, the question is not necessarily how many more people have internet access to the internet every year, but what are they doing with it? And it's interesting to see 92.4% of all internet users in Nigeria watch some sort of video. So this, yes, there's browsing, yes, there's sharing things on social media and chatting and things like that, but effectively, the internet has become almost like a satellite broadcaster with a multitude of TV channels, except instead of 10, 20, 30, 40, there's thousands of different TV channels, all produced by everyone from people shooting TikTok videos in their basement to Netflix and everyone in between. The videos that are doing best, music videos, comedy, comedy videos are often the most shareable. Tutorials, how-to videos, live streams are very popular as well. But you can see a lot of these different types of content coming through. Again, there's a lot of frivolity, but there's also a lot of very seriousness. And this is something we've seen across a lot of markets, is that people go online for a combination of entertainment and information, and it provides access to facts, information, education, which they can't get anywhere else. But at the same time, it's not all work. There needs to be play as well. Let's have a look at the next slide. So if you look at this is on the data on the right here is from the panel we run with OMD Nigeria and the OMG partners, looking at the VOD platforms currently being used in Nigeria, and as well as the content that the VOD viewers are looking at. And it's very interesting to see YouTube Premium on top, followed by Netflix. We're getting some local content coming through with Iroko and Showmax, at least regionally local, and then Amazon Prime at Star Times. So some very, very strong performance coming through from the VOD platforms. What are they going there for? And this is again across about a dozen different countries in Africa where we've looked at this. It's movies that drive VOD viewership still at this point. Every now and then there's a big series, and as you can see on the left there, Big Brother Niger is a massive property, which whenever it's on is a huge driver of VOD viewership. On a more general level, though, it's all about the access to those movies and those different all about access to movies, and something that evidently they're not getting in other sources. Given that people are trying to stream or looking to stream movies and relatively long content, the cost of data is going to be crucial. and that data cost keeps coming down. So if you want to kind of get an example of a market where the cost of data has dropped dramatically and the impact it's had on media, you can look at India. Very, very cheap data has become available, and the proliferation in online viewing, online streaming has been very dramatic. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly that comes to Nigeria, how fast the rates will drop, how much inflation bites to counteract that, and what the impact is going to be. But it's certainly going to be big. So, so the trend, let's look at the next slide. The trend is that there's going to continue to be dramatic in VOD viewership in Nigeria. I think something else that's going to see an evolution maybe more in 2024 than 2023 is the fragmentation even of VOD as well. Netflix is increasingly coming under challenge from different providers like Disney Plus and Universal Plus, now more recently introduced, as each of the actual
Emmanuel,
content
the presentation
producers
is
start to launch their own streaming services. I met with Paramount a couple of months ago, and they're launching their own SVOD service in 2024. So yeah, that is likely to become a lot more fragmented, which of course has its own implications for marketers, advertisers. At the moment, of course, you can't advertise on SVOD platforms through conventional means. The only way you can do that, and this thank you very much, Emmanuel, speaks to the point in the last column there on the market. Product integration and brand infusion is at present the way to go. And there's been some successful applications of that in some obviously locally produced streaming video content, such as Big Brother Nigeria and a couple of others. But the downside of that is that it takes a while. You have to integrate your brand in a production, and if the show only comes out a few months later, then the moment for that brand may have passed, and marketers and brands are potentially going to have to learn to work with that delay. Of course, there is also the imminent advent of advertising being supported on SVOD and VOD platforms. So that's something that could potentially provide a lot of opportunities for people who don't have necessarily the ability to pay the subscription fees for these SVOD platforms, but are interested in our content, so they can sign on to advertising versions that carry advertising and reduce the access cost. So, but I'm not sure. I think certainly on Netflix's side, I don't think that's likely to be rolled out in 2023. I believe it's 2024, but I might be wrong. Okay.
I think we are breaking the voice. Matt?
Can everyone hear me clearly still?
Yes, yes, go on.
All right. Okay. So another trend, and some other data we see moving forward is that we talked a lot about trust, particularly coming through from the local from the younger generation, from Gen Z, and so the most trusted platforms, of course, after word of mouth, which has always been the most trusted platform. Yes, TV ads are still up there, but and sponsorships and those things. So we're not seeing that a dramatic shift in Nigeria and Ghana in terms of where people are assigning their trust. The problem is that we've got an increasingly short amount of time in which to gauge or to capture their attention. So Nielsen did a very interesting global study which looked at people's attention span and over time. And if you look, for example, in 2000, they came up with 12 seconds as an average human attention span. It could be as low as 8 seconds today, which is less than your average goldfish. So what are the implications? I mean, sorry, what that means, let's have a look at the next slide, is that on average, in terms of the as an advertiser, you're trying to reach someone with a TV ad or a piece of creative, you have 3.5 seconds to make an impression. That's from this Static Berg Nielsen study. So I don't think it's completely coincidental that 3.5 seconds is about as long as it takes to decide if you're going to watch this TikTok video or skip to the next one. So there's definitely a challenge there in terms of adapting to that to this new sort of short attention span. And let's go to the next slide. So if we look at the, using the World Cup as a case study, there's people in 2018 largely watched the World Cup on TV. This was in Nigeria as well. Largely watched the World Cup on TV, about 85%. For this World Cup, TV was down to 51%. We saw website viewing, online viewing, mobile apps coming through at about a third. So what's very interesting as well is that a relatively small number of people, only about a third, actually wanted to just sit and watch the game. Lots of people, the majority of people actually are doing other things at the same time while watching the World Cup games. So browsing on social media, checking on the stats of other matches, and I do that as well. And then obviously at halftime, people aren't sitting. Only about a third of people are sitting down to or staying seated, so they have an opportunity to be exposed to halftime advertising. So when it comes to your simultaneous consumption of media activities, it kind of feeds into this proliferation of choice and the desire to chase after choice. There's always somewhere else to look. So whatever it is that we're trying to get our audience to engage with, we always need to be aware of the alternatives that are drawing people away all the time. Let's look at the next slide. So that's, I think, my final key trend that I see is that the consumer attention span is continuing to drop with all the alternatives. So in response to that, brands are going to have to start planning for attention rather than planning for reach. So not how many people you're reaching, but how many people are actually paying attention. So it's the third of your audience that are actually sitting down at halftime watching the halftime show and the adverts. It's people who are leaning forward and interacting, not necessarily even not necessarily even just paying attention, but potentially actually positively engaging through social media or other platforms. So in terms of the implications, let's go to the next slide. And this is something that OMD has picked up with their study on attention planning, is that we're seeing a decrease, quite a significant decrease in the average attention levels paid to adverts as the time or the length of the advert increases. So as you go further into an advert, the attention declines. What's interesting to see, though, is that that's, while on overall levels, that ties in with what we're just discussing about a goldfish attention span, but it's not a uniform picture across the board. Strong content, and again, going back to the first trend, content is king. So an engaging creative that really captures people's attention and triggers an emotion will still retain people's attention for a longer period of time. People are still watching. We touched on their movies being the key driver of VOD. So it's not like people don't have an attention span at all. They just want it to be held, and it's increasingly difficult to hold people's attention, which means we have to rise to that challenge. Next slide. Yeah, so in terms of media, we need to think much more widely than just if you're a TV channel competing with other TV channels, or if you're a radio station competing with other radio stations. You've got to think across all of the different media platforms at the same time. And across all of those media platforms, you've got to find ways to engage with people. And Emmanuel will talk a little bit more about some of the techniques for getting that right. that we foresee might be useful. In terms of the market, it's all about research, and obviously as a research house we're always going to say that, but we've seen the impact on the work that our clients have done, and the ROI they're getting and the impact that their work is doing in everything from anti-COVID campaigns to brand awareness and response to media campaigns. That understanding, getting the data beforehand, and understanding exactly what your target audience is doing and needing and wanting is hugely important and makes a massive difference.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I think thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. And Emmanuel, over to you, please.
All right. Thank you very much for the insightful sessions, presentations from Prof and Matt. And so in wrapping up, I'll just take us through a few trends, still building on the trends that have been presented before now. And yes, we've seen how that the consumer landscape is changing and how marketers need to revise how they plan. Okay, and the next trend here is basically looking at a particular sector that prior to now has not really gotten or been given much attention, and that's gaming. All right, globally, we have about 2.6 billion gamers, with 50% of that being played on the mobile. Bringing it home to Nigeria, where over 96% of our internet users connect via their smartphones, spending an average of 5 hours online daily. Majority of the ads being served are done within an app environment. And according to data from Eskimi, we see that gaming is actually second to entertainment in terms of what consumers love to do online, which is quite interesting because when you look at gaming, you would expect it's largely driven by the young audience. However, we're seeing that across all age brackets, gaming seems to be, gaining attention, with an average of about 70% of all age brackets spending at least 3 hours, playing one form or the other. I'm sure everyone on the call must have heard of Candy Crush and a couple of the other popular ones. But why is this important for us in this session? A recent study carried out by Anzo and Lumen actually showed that people that play mobile games spend twice as much time consuming in-game ads compared to other digital channels. And when you think about the conversation around the short attention span, this is something that should get attention, because it means that you have a more captive audience within an in-game environment than you would in other digital platforms. And how are advertisers, responding to this? Another research from StackAdapt shows that the conversation and concerns around the cookieless effect cookieless future taking effect, right, has led marketers to reappraise how they go about their marketing communications targeting, especially on digital platforms, right? 95% of them say yes, they are placing priorities on it, but most of them really are not even sure where to start from, okay? And that's, is bringing to the fore a previously unconspicuous or unpopular form of advertising, which is contextual advertising. And what is contextual advertising? It's basically ensuring that your ads come up in the right environment, that's suited to the consumer or the target audience in such a way that it guarantees that they are going to be positively predisposed, to your communication or advertising. And that's what gaming, provides. And we're saying increasingly going into 2023, mobile gaming advertising will begin to come to the fore as marketers, develop interest in it, okay? Especially as we move into the cookieless future. And what are the implications? Right now, like I said before, it's not so popular here, but you can see where the trend is leading. So for the media owners, it simply means we need to start thinking creatively and out of the box, all right? and also consider the gamification of some of our popular contents that resonate to the passion points of consumers. A good example is what Super Sports is doing with their Super Pick app, all right? And what does the app do? Sports, you know, is a very big content in Nigeria. Basically, the Super Picks app helps or ensures that, you know, football fans get an opportunity to be rewarded for predicting correct, you know, match scores, all right? And they do this on a weekly basis. So that's a very simple way of, you know, weaving gamification into content that is being provided. And for consumers, it's more of, you know, a more immersive experience, right? Gaming has this thing of pumping what we call this joy hormones in your mind. When you play and you get a reward for that, it sort of triggers a positive response. So ads that sit in this environment, as marketers move towards contextual advertising, what it simply then means is that advertising will be less intrusive, you know, and more receptive for the consumers. And for marketers, right, in terms of markets, yes, the cookieless advertising is here. The timeline was supposed to be taking effect earlier this year, but I think Google has moved the goalpost again. But the truth is it's coming because there are lots of conversation around privacy, right? And we need to, you know, be well abreast and ready, right, to ensure that the end game of reaching out to our consumers on the digital platform, which is growing, is not, you know, short-served. And one of the ways marketers can also do that is to build gamification into the media channel offerings that we are, you know, currently using to reach them. That will require, you know, partnership. That will require dependence on technical partners to help navigate this unfamiliar terrain. And it's better to take a proactive approach than being reactive. All right. An example of, you know, gamification for brand use is also what one of our brands, Munchie, tried out this year, which was they signed the brand ambassador, Davido, and developed a gaming app that got consumers, you know, to play with the ad, and the character in the game was, you know, the brand ambassador. Quite interesting and, you know, relatively innovative. So we're saying for brands, this is something that we also need to begin to look at. We can use it as an owned asset, you know, as well, just to ensure that we keep consumers engaged and we serve them our ads in a way that, you know, ensures that the message, they are quite receptive to it. So that's an opportunity that marketers should also look at. Moving on to the next slide, in ways in which we feel advertisers should respond. Some recent innovations, you know, that we have observed in markets. I'm just going to play a series of videos, after which, you know, we'll discuss about that. So notice the billboard, how it's responsive, you know, with the lights. This is an out-of-home platform. And then you would also see the second video here, which was a water tank or a series of water tanks that were, you know, mural painted into looking like cans, you know, for the product. Okay. Another innovative outdoor execution that we also saw was projector ads, where you can see in the nighttime, the ad was projected on the surface of a massive building. You know, this was also executed by some brands in market. And lastly, you have a rather interesting, you know, outdoor execution that got everybody in Lagos talking. What you are seeing on the screen is the night sky in Lagos with 500 drones, all right, used to create like a 3D demonstration of a brand message. So these are innovations that we are noticing, right, in out-of-home advertising, and that we thought to curate some of them to share with you. On television, we see innovations from the likes of DSTV, where they are now providing opportunities for viewers at home to directly shop for products that they are seeing on TV. So what happens is the ad format comes to you in the form of a squeeze back, and you can scan the QR code and which takes you to a landing page, right, on the platform, and you can order whatever it is that you're seeing on TV. Still quite unpopular, but it's actually, this technology is in market and is available in Nigeria. Another one is the dynamic ad insertion on video on demand platforms. So we talked about TV viewership moving online or being fragmented. And what this solution allows you to do is such that you divide your inventories along linear versus online, which means those that are watching on live TV get to see an ad, say ad A, while the people watching that same content online or on video, via video on demand, get to see a completely different ad at the same time. And why do we think, this is quite interesting? These adverts can also be geo-targeted, right? So you can target people living in Kaduna with a different advert, right? Versus those living in Lagos, but all of that is restricted to the online platform, which is different from what those watching on TV would see. But this is not just limited to, the media platforms. We've also seen some quite interesting innovations from the brand side. The video
Do you know you can now check your oral health anytime, anywhere with My Tooth Doc, the Colgate WhatsApp dentist. Send hi now to 098 999 6001 on WhatsApp to check your oral health for free. Endorsed by the Nigerian Dental Association.
Okay, so what you just saw, right, was a toothpaste brand, all right, leveraging the power of artificial intelligence to create a dentist, okay, deployed via WhatsApp. So how it works, you can try it, after the meeting, okay, is you say hi to the, you send a message to a WhatsApp number, and then you get series of prompts which you respond to, take pictures of your teeth and all of that. And at the end of the day, you get a dental report that is well over 90% accurate, as confirmed by the Nigeria Dental Association, coming from a brand, right? Another interesting one is more of a brand times by an influencer collaboration, very unusual, which is Davido partnering with the Viva detergent, okay, as a brand ambassador. Who would have thought that a detergent brand that's usually targeted at women and mothers would partner with a male musician or male entertainer as a brand ambassador? And feedback we got is this particular partnership actually did work. As research has shown, I wouldn't want to go into all of the data, but it actually worked, for the intended purpose for the brand. And the last on the list here is a brand coming into the lifestyle space to reposition itself. And this is Stanbic Fuse Talent Hunt, where they are, of course, the demographic they're trying to target, the Gen Zs and the youths, playing in their passion points around music, dance, fashion and tech, but making it into a spin where it's more like a talent hunt. And the prize money for that particular competition is 32 million naira. Just over the weekend was the closure for the call for entries, And what we're increasingly seeing is brands are also, getting more innovative and creative in response to some of those points that we have identified in the previous slide. And we're saying going into 2023, expect to see more media innovations and collaboration. And collaboration here is not limited to media. It could come from the brand, it could come from the consumers and all of that. So we're going into the year of increased innovations. And why is this important, right? For the media owners, really, it's looking at, how you create new platforms and, formats, which can turn out to become new streams of income. As you saw with the dynamic ad insertion by DSTV, what that simply means is you can now open up an additional inventory for those that want to watch via the online platforms, okay? So that sort of solves the problem of category exclusivity that we always have when it comes to major sponsorships, okay? Your sponsorship can be limited to linear TV, or you do a combination of the two, which will come at a much higher cost. So it's an opportunity, for media owners to generate more revenue. Another point is you also need to think, across multiple touch points in bringing campaigns to life, all right? And the truth is, as we have seen, investment will flow in the direction of creative solutions. Brands and marketers are looking for partners, not just vendors or contractors or business people. They are looking for partners in progress. And the innovative media house, right, will be one that will definitely, smile to the bank at the end of it. It might interest you to note that the drone advertising that I shared on the first set of slides actually cost a whopping $500,000 as confirmed by the guys that deployed it. And they were not media people. It was an agricultural company that, was reconfigured to be able to make this particular solution happen. So money would go in the direction of creativity. For consumers, it's primarily a deeper connection with brands, right? When we talked about attention span dropping, when you do things outside of the box, the natural or default reaction would be, buzz, right? Conversation and media, all right? I didn't see the advert in the drone, the night skies personally, but I still got to find out about it because people were talking about it, So for them, it's basically looking at brands, that go beyond the typical, buy and sell and all of that to create experiences that is memorable for them. And for marketers, of course, research is important to understand consumer motivations and desires, all right, and how we can build equity for our brands. Brand salience is becoming a serious topic right now that is, beyond the typical brand health parameters of awareness, reach, and all of that. Meaningfulness is also something that marketers take. And these are, innovation helps you to create such a meaningful experience. Take example, the Colgate advert we just talked about now. We have gone from trying to sell a toothpaste to providing solutions to your oral health, which, if you look at the stats, Nigeria is one of the most, in terms of dental penetration, one of the lowest in the world. And because the brand knows that WhatsApp, there's a high penetration of WhatsApp, that solution fits, very much perfect. So it's also looking at how we can derive, brand meaning and relevant association with our consumers. And in conclusion of this particular trend, right, this particular point, only the brave that are ready to embrace the culture of collaboration and innovation that is necessary for creativity will win in 2023. It's a no-brainer, right? Innovation doesn't have to be restricted to you. It might involve collaboration across your comfort zone or what you're familiar with. We're saying brands need to be open, media partners need to be open, and the entire sector has to be open. In the words of Andrew S. Group, he says only the paranoid would survive. And with that, we move to the final trend for today, which I'm sure is something we can all relate with or would have experienced or have either direct or indirect experience. And that is looking at two different countries here on the slides. This is an age pyramid, okay? And that looks at the population of a country broken down by gender across different age groups. You will find that the UK and Canada have a relatively older population. If you look at that of Nigeria, it's almost like a perfect pyramid, which means we have a much younger demography and in our population. Prof already even spoke to that, saying the median age in Nigeria is 19 years of age. Why is this data important? If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you would find that these are the numbers of job openings, okay, in the past 1 year that came from these two markets. And you would see tech jobs, for example, were over 4 million as reported by TechNation, and media, advertising, and PR or marketing, all right, is on one of those top lists. As a matter of fact, there were over 600,000 openings, job vacancies in this particular sector. Why is this of any importance? Or why are we sharing this stats with you? We're saying the aftermath of COVID, coupled with the aging population in these developed markets, has created a labor shortage because people are getting retired, and as they retire, there's a need to fill up those roles. And what is happening now, thanks to COVID, the world has become even more globalized. And that means you can now resource talent from anywhere in the world. And the implication of that is what you can see on the screen here. That is a picture of Nigerian airports, right? And it shows people are, on queue to leave the country. I'm sure you must have heard of the parlance, Japa. That is what is happening, okay? Looking at more stats, Nigeria recorded mass immigration in search of greener pastures to this markets. Canada, the UK, and Europe are, top on the list of most preferred destinations, all right? We looked at the data from the UK Home Office, and we found that between 2019 and 2022, the number of student visas or study visas that were issued to Nigerians rose by 686%. And that's a massive, massive jump, right? Looking at stats from work permits also issued, Nigeria came second on the list, second to, I think, India, all right? Canada as well, year on year, has increased in the number of immigrations coming into this market. It's so rampant in Nigeria now that people have built a business out of, this Japa desperation. You see on the right, on the extreme right, is a banner published, on social media, asking people to, work with them to get proof of funds, which is one of the prerequisites, for getting visas to be. People have built an entire business, either via work permit or via student route and all whatnot. Experienced Nigerians, okay, are, desperate to get out of the shores of this country. And what are the major factors, fueling this voluntary migration out of the country? One is the desire for better career opportunities. The Naira is currently devalued, right? And that simply means that even though you are earning much in Naira, as long as it is in Naira, your capacity to play in the global economy is somewhat, affected. Secondly is the insecurity that, is facing everybody, as we can see, kidnapping, terrorism, banditry. It's one of the. The third is the need to provide a better future for their children, okay? And then fourth is for further education. But of course, closely linked to the further education is you move alongside your family. Recent data that came out some months ago was, I think before the last prime minister, had to resign, showed that Nigerians had the highest number of dependents tied to student visas, which meant that the student visa was just a cover, to create a soft landing for them to relocate to their family. And there's also the concern around governance generally in the country. Those are the main reasons, are fueling this. And what are we saying, is that this increased migration, okay, of experienced talents, right, leaving Nigeria into those other markets to fill those, labor shortages is going to have a mixed effect on our landscape. And some of them are already, being immediately felt, right? I'm sure everyone on this call either knows somebody, okay, that has either relocated or is planning to relocate, or somebody that knows somebody, that has relocated out of the country, okay? For the media, the implication is almost, immediate. We're going to be seeing. Sorry about that. We're going to be seeing increasingly impact on the quality of services, okay? And this is speaking specifically to the, media. It's not even restricted to the media landscape, to be honest, right? Because where you have talented people now who believe, there are better opportunities out there, they will move, and the vacancies they leave, might not necessarily be easily filled, all right? We see all of this in shortcomings right now. Majority of Nigerians, for example, in the banking sector, okay, are already complaining about, some of their apps not working and all of that. And this didn't used to be the case a few years ago, okay? The benefits on the side of the media is some of our local content now begin to make way into the international scene. Yes, we know Afrobeat is global, but we're talking specifically our local content. And what is going to be fueling that is the people that have relocated, the diaspora, of course, wants to still feel connected to the home country. And how do they do that? It's by having access to this content. Someone saying something? Okay. Another point is, yes, we talked about the issue of the talent. So access to talent becomes either much of a problem or now more expensive, because what it means is if I have an offer of paying me $1,000, you would better have to match or exceed that offer, which, put a strain on the purse of, businesses. For the consumers, the points already had been itemized, right? But a certain group of people believe that the migration can also be a blessing in disguise, because the diaspora community would improve, foreign remittances back home, as those that have relocated try to send money back to their loved ones at home, to lead their lives. So we're saying that can also be a booster, for the economy. Another point to note is the option of remote work, which is people not necessarily relocating, still in Nigeria, but they are working for global companies, thanks to technology, and they are getting paid in foreign currencies. For marketers, I think marketers have spoken extensively about the implications of this as well. Certain categories are going to benefit from this situation. And an example are fintech, specifically those that are, into the cross-border payments services, right? Because as people relocate, as more and more Nigerians relocate, they are looking for means of sending money back home. And there are lots of innovations, innovative tech companies, providing these services right now. We also feel that real estate companies will benefit from this, because as people relocate, their hearts are still at home. They want to be able to take advantage of the currency differential, right, to invest and build assets for themselves back home for that eventual, homecoming. As Yorubas say, permit me to speak Yoruba, they say Ajodabile, which implies that no matter where you go, right, you would always find your way back home. So ahead of that, real estate is one area that, we're saying is also going to benefit from this, all right? But overall, it's going to definitely take a toll on the government, on individual local businesses will definitely feel the heat of this. And that's why I said it's a bittersweet experience, for both hands. Maybe down the line over the years, we probably will begin to see, improvements in terms of quality. As people come back home, they bring expertise, they bring resources, and then it can further improve the overall estate of all of us who are Nigerians. And with that, I've come to the end of the trends presentation. We hope you found it quite insightful. On screen here is a summary of all of the 10 trends, starting from trend 1 on the election, challenging typical norms, trend 2 on high inflation, but investment expected to increase. Trend 3 states that although the viable consumer markets in Nigeria will shrink, hope will always sell. Trend 4 says that content will continue to be king as the audience follows where it leads. 5 says Gen Zs will be harder to reach and by traditional channels alone. Internet, mobile penetration, and youth will drive video on demand growth by double digits in trend 6. 7 is saying that as consumer attention span drops, brands will move from planning for reach to attention. And then the 8, we are forecasting that there'll be an interest in mobile gaming as the cookieless effect takes effect, a cookieless future takes effect. And number 9 is we expect to see more innovations and cross, industry collaborations as we strive to, cut through the clutter and reach more consumers. And finally, we said that the increased migration of experienced talents will have a mixed effect on the overall landscape. At this point, I'd like to hand over to Nitin, and thank you all very much for listening in. Hope you found this presentations quite insightful and useful in your business decision making. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
So
Emmanuel,
over to you,
for
Newton.
yes, thank you, Emmanuel, and it was a very good presentation. Thank you very much. So, actually, we planned for a break, but I don't think so. We can take a break because some of the panelists would like to attend some other meeting. So, I will directly go to the panel discussion now. So, as I go to the panel discussion, I would like to introduce some of the key members who are there in the panel today. First is Dr. Leken Fadolopo. He is the registrar and also the CEO of Advertising Regulatory Council of India, which we call ARCON. He is also a well-known leader. He is a very iconic leader who has done 3 master's degree in marketing. So welcome, Dr. Leken, to this forum. The next person I have here is Mr. Osamede. Mr. Osamede is the president for Advan, and he also has a very vast experience in marketing and communication. So he has spent, I think, more than 20 years in marketing and managing the FMCG business. Then next I have Mr. Ayola Ogunyomi. Ayola Ogunyomi is from Patricia. He is one of the commercial director, and also he's having a master degree in mass communication and MBA from Nexport University. So welcome, Mr. Ayola, for this panel discussion.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Then we have Mr. Abhi. Sorry, there is an echo happening. Okay. Sorry. It's fine now. Okay, we have Mr. Abhijuan, who is the commercial director for Bobo Beverages. He is also one of the strategists and he's also leader in terms of marketing management and commercial operation. And also I heard he's a very good strategist. So welcome to Mr. Abhijuan for this forum.
Thank you very much, Nitin.
Okay, next we have Mr. Patrick Gomes, and Patrick Gomes has more than 23 years of experience. Currently, Patrick is the CEO for Digitex Plus, one of the leading digital agency, and also he is a part of Omnicom Group. So welcome, Patrick, to this panel discussion.
Thank you, Nathan. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And the next and the last but not least, we have Adebayo, I think one of the famous personality in the industry, I would say. He's having a very strong media background as well as the marketing background, and he knows what media works in Nigeria at least, and that I 100% know. So welcome, Inka, for this forum.
Thank you so much, Nistin. Nice to be here.
Okay, thank you. So without wasting much time, I would like to go through the questions because I have written few questions here and we also got few questions from audience. So my question number 1 goes to Doctor, who's also the APCON register. Doctor, the question is coming as, what is the impact of recent regulations on the advertising landscape? I mean, you know, in the policies of digital and election, because election and effective regulation on related advertising is what somebody is asking this question. Would you like to address this?
So, Nitin, Doctor took permission here.
Okay.
He will join back. I think there's something something came up for him that he needed to attend to real quick. He will be back on the call.
Okay. Thank you, Richard, for this. Anybody would like to address this question? Maybe I will go to Inka. Inka, you would like to address this question?
Thank you, Nitin. Without holding brief for the DG of ALCON, I think it's been able to bring in some positive change in the industry. particularly with respect to regulation. And I think fairly well that I think it boils down to the fact that wanting to instill some level of sanity into what we do and how we do them. And I think the key focus happens to be in the digital space with the flurry of information going on in there, and the laxity with which some people handle such information. We need to be very careful. And that is why they felt they need to kind of regulate. But how well they've gone on that is something that is being worked on. And I'm sure this should come into full stream from 2023 because it's a critical area to focus on. Of course, they are very much on top of that. And that regulatory role is being played at a very high level right now. So I think it's something positive for the industry.
Okay, that's good. I mean, even some brand and some new entrants wants to enter, they know that how important it is. Yeah, from the advertising perspective.
Absolutely.
That's good. Thank you, Inka, for that. The second question I have here for Advant President, sir, the question is, with inflation, rising production cost and shrinking consumer pursuit, how are brands adjusting their marketing plans looking forward? Would you like to highlight on this?
Okay, thanks, Niti. Can you hear me? Can you
I
guys
repeat
hear
the
me?
question? Yeah.
I heard the question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Go on.
Okay, I said thanks, and thanks for the Omnicom Media Reach Group and all the guys that have participated in this. So for me, it's a question that whenever it comes up, I say to myself, people then need to really understand who we are. We would always want to market as cheaply as we can and as effectively as possible. So it's about getting value for every kobo spent. So with inflation, it just means we need to go deeper into our principle of doing stuff and getting things done as cheap as possible. So it just means it helps us to get better at what we do. So inflation means cost would rise. It means we need to spend more. We'll be spending more in terms of numerical value, in terms of naira value. So what will that do? It means you have to be very effective because what you are spending now is higher than what you spent before, and then becomes what would that bring to you? So we would go back to what we know how to do best. So as somebody had said, so I've heard a lot of things with all the different trends. And I like the one that says investment will flow in the area of creativity. It just means we'll be creative in what we do because now it's more expensive for us to do. So it means you might not, your budget might increase in terms of the number. So you might get from maybe, give an example, from 10 billion to 12 billion because of taking constant of inflationary. But it just means now that you need to still get the impact that you desire. So with increase in cost, we have like one of the presenters also said that there will be an increase in spend. Increase in spend will just definitely be taking note of inflation because as brands we always know that inflation has to be put into your spend. So the way we also do look at increase because in terms of our different salaries in our different companies and all that, and increase in whatever we are doing. So it will increase cost, as I said before. We then need to be more creative in getting things done because with increased cost, and then we then need to take cost to where it works. And I've had a lot of conversations, I've heard a lot of things which I like, and I just use my few time to just make some input. In terms of the first trend around the 2023 election that will challenge the typical norm, we have had election cycles as democracy for the past how many years now, and brands will understand. So I'm seeing a thing out, so we won't be heavy because we don't want to also be competing with the political parties because they would then have to spend a lot of money in the first few months because elections is February. So as brands are going to take that into consideration. So the norm for us would still be we know what we're doing, we know how to not compete or fight. Because even if you come from a big national brand, you don't even fight with different categories in your entity. You tell them, okay, let me take the lead now. When I'm done, you come. So we already know how to avoid clutter, and try to be as effective as possible. The other piece I also want to just talk to a bit is that the Japa factor. The Japa factor is not new. If you check the trend when the military was around, Japa was what we did to survive them. So I come from a state that Japa is as old as us. I'm from Edo State, and you know the trend. So there's a lot of controversy around where we went to, what we did there. But Japa is always about trying to enhance your family. So I would say the trend would be when things are down in Nigeria, Japa becomes an option. That's what I've also noticed. Also, when the exchange rate becomes very favorable, Japa becomes an option. So that when you send $1 home or £1 home, becomes very huge. So I just wanted to add that the Japa factor. It is not new. It's been here. When I was growing up, Japa was, I'm talking about in the 80s, and that time was because of the military and how the things were. So Japa was really there. So I just say, well done again. Thanks, guys. I wanted to be part of this, even though I had some other commitments. And I said to myself, I must listen to the trend, because in marketing, such trends help us. And on the final note, a very big well done to the media buying side. I've been an advocate and a proponent of what you guys bring to the table. And this is not me trying to patronize you guys. It's so unique, so different. It's so I would say what I said to my team and always to people. A bad creative that is well placed will give you mileage. A good creative that is badly placed is money wasted. So you see how it works. So money will go towards creative, I agree. But the placement, and that's why I'm able to say to challenge the industry. My view is you guys taking the lead role in whatever we do will turn this industry around in such a way that from the get-go, the data you need added to our data in-house, because we are so data-driven and we buy a lot of research around what our consumers are doing, what our consumers are saying, which is something that you guys also spend a lot of money on to get the relevant data. So if we merge both your data and our data, we change the dial so fast, so quick, and so effective. I'm going to repeat what I said. A bad creative, well placed, even if it's just your logo, you are placing very well, and people are having top of the mind for your brand, it will help you. A very, very good creative that is badly placed. If you guys don't get data right in placement, giving us the reach frequency that we need, sorry, nothing was done. Because nobody will even remember, nobody will see, and you just wasted your money. And that's my final input. And well done, and thanks to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Osumede. I think very well said. I like the tagline, what you said. And yes, is going to be challenging 2023. And a lot of people are going for innovation and creativity. That is where client will not mind investing, but they would like to see some innovation and creative ideas, in the market. Thank you very much. Yeah, I have one question here, which looks very technical. So maybe I would like to ask Mr. Patrick Gomes. Patrick, the question is on media inflation, is how do media owners balance the dilemmas of rates being based on viewership, not capex or opex, and content acquisition, consumer versus brand demand? So would you like to take this question and address, please?
Sure. Interesting question. I think there has been, able to get it from the industry point of view, there has been an outcry, from the media owners not being able to get maybe the fair price of their content. The good thing is, that we are soon transitioning into the new audience measurement and for which the work has already commenced. Yes, that's how typically the mindset of the media owners is, cost, and therefore the pricing and different types of pricing are dependent on that. But I would want maybe the media owners to possibly to get not a threat, but more of a challenge that's coming up. A lot of it is going to be questioned. What we believe the traditional rating used to be is likely to be continuing. The methods are changing, the way of capturing data will change, and various other things are going to happen. So maybe if a program was maybe in a traditional method was delivering maybe 5 rating point in the new audience measurement, chances are that can go to even a 1 rating point. What I'm trying to say is I'm not scaring, but what is important for us is to know the media owners will be certainly challenged to ensure that their pipeline of content is ready. And what do I mean by pipeline of content? Is basically what I call a supply. So you need to ensure that your supply is ready to take to the demand. And what is demand over here? Basically, audience watching your content. I think we have enough examples in our today's presentation we've been able to see and also understand. There is a shift that is happening from a linear to a non-linear. There is a reason for that. So we're assuming that it will be, the same scenario post the new audience measurement. I would say our assumptions will be wrong. It is important for media owners to know this trend and also try to understand, what is really working in the market, what is that people are consuming. If the shift is happening from a linear to a non-linear, there's a reason for that to happen. And likewise, there's a lot of signals we can pick up from various angles. I think for us, it's important to understand that and ensure that, our supply is ready to cater to the demand. And I think once we get that thing right, pricing factors will come into play, but it's important to ensure that the content remains the king, and that basically is where the audience will eventually go. We've seen that in today's presentation also. So that's really where we need to be starting to focus on. That will be my response to your question. But good, important for us to know because we are transitioning into the new audience measurement. And being ready is important versus being caught unaware because things are not going to change what it used to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Patrick. I think it's very clear. Professor Uche, I have my personal question here. I like your presentation, the way you have taken the slides. So my question, is a way, or maybe a little into economic side. The impact of cost inflation and economic hardship on consumers and businesses in general. Would you like to highlight on that, Professor Uche?
Yes, thank you. So, the increased inflation, the high cost of living is creating some harsh effects. One thing is that the share of wallet has dropped. We are seeing people moving more in the direction of buying what is most necessary, discretionary spending. But there's also an interesting trend, which is actually that consumers are actually going for necessities. And so that's forcing competition to be more closely linked. I can give the example here that after food items, airtime is one of the most purchased and the fastest moving item right now. And therefore, that's making airtime become a strong competitor to the alcoholic beverage are changing precisely because the economic dynamics are changing. And so what we foresee is that consumers are going to be way more demanding in terms of what they spend on and the kind of value they expect to have. And they're going to be more unforgiving to brands that do not take care of offering value at very affordable prices. So that's what I think.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Uche. I think we lost you for a few seconds, but we got your answer. Thank you very much. Very well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to ask one more question to Mr. Ayola. I think, Ayola, you are working on a platform, a payment platform, So my question is on content related. So how would you access the impact of TV sponsorship compared to digital for your brand? Would you like to highlight on that? Yeah.
Thank you very much. In order to assess the impact of TV to digital, some key aspects need to be analyzed, right? What's the goal of the business? What's the goal of the campaign? What KPIs and metrics are you measuring? And basically, what outputs or results do you want to achieve, right? When we go into TV sponsorship, we've gone into Big Brother sponsorship over time. And for us, the campaign or the business goal was more important. At that point in time, the business goal was to raise awareness of the brand and also recruit new users. And TV was one of the channels that we used to achieve this result because of the mass audience reach that TV would give you. That's not to say that digital would not give you the same thing, right, when it comes to mass audience. But with respect to our targeting at that point in time, it was for us to reach a wider audience as opposed to specific, right? Also, when it comes to TV, the impact of TV is really, really massive, right? We saw a large result when it came to the campaign that we executed. So that would be the advantage or impact of TV over digital.
Okay, I think it's clear. There is one more question coming here. I think that question probably I would place to Mr. Abidion. Mr. Abidion, the question is coming for this. Somebody has mentioned about the Gen Z generation, and so the question is on that particularly, that how are brands adjusting to demands of this peculiar set of audience? How brands can reach to this audience and how they can fulfill the demand?
All right, thanks, Nitin, and thanks everyone who have spoken this afternoon. I think it's been an insightful session. The first for me, before thinking about how brands can adjust to the demands of Gen Z, the first thing is to understand you can't connect with a generation or a consumer set without understanding who they are. And I think the first thing marketers need to do is try to strike a very good understanding from what I call, in marketing is very prevalent, what I call 5W point of view. Who are these people? What do they buy? Where do they buy? When do they buy? And why? Which is more important. Why do they buy? If we can unlock this insight, then it's easier to actually, one, connect with them. And for the purpose of this, of the context of Gen Z, which implies people who are from the mid 90s and to the early 2000s. So it implies that these guys are, one, digital enabled. So most of the content of brands has to be digital first to connect with these guys. So this is how brands are, adjusting to realize that traditional medias are very important, but however, to connect with these guys, you have to move to where they live. And we saw the statistic when Emmanuel was sharing the other time. A lot of them spend more than 5 hours a day on their platforms. So any company or brands who wants to connect with these people must move in this direction. The second thing, very quickly, is the content itself must be video first. These guys enjoy visual inclined content, and it must be snackable. These guys are very, very impatient, so you can't have a long series of content serving them. They move to something as attention span is very, very low. So you need to put a succinct content together and then be able to pass it across to them. There were a couple of things that the speakers also mentioned. These guys love conversation. Enough of marketing or brand try to speak from one direction. Platform need to be created for interactivity, and I think that is what they enjoy. So create a platform and let them speak, let them talk, let them interact with themselves. And if you are going to use influencers, use Gen Z's influencers who can actually understand their own terminologies. I think another thing is they are explorers, and you need to create that part of your content for them to be able to explore and bring out their creativity more. And I think one of the speakers also mentioned the need for authenticity and being truthful in our communication to them. They love it. They easily forgive, to be honest. You do something to them, as long as you're not brash, you're not that unnecessarily arrogant about it. They take it and they move on with their life, unlike the old generation that keeps things in their hearts and never forgives a brand. They love empowerment. So any brands that is going to actually connect with these guys must be thinking about how do we empower them. And I love the fact that we call it out during the insight session, how brands are beginning to move into CSR and then empowerment space. And I think if brands do some of these things, they are able to connect effectively with the Gen Zs. They are consumers. They just have their own way of life. And as soon as you can plug in into your own way of life, you connect with them. And very interestingly, they could be very, very loyal. They could be very, very loyal when they find when they are connected to you, not just from a transactional point of view, but from a relational point of view. And I think that's what I will put a stop on that.
Thank you, Mr. Abhi. It's again well said. There is a lot of the question is being repeated and very interesting question for especially for election, and I was expecting this question from a lot of people, and it is coming here. So maybe I would like to take this question to Mr. Inka because it's very relevant probably from Nigerian perspective. So impact of election on advertising, Inka. This is a favorite question, for next 2-3 months. So how do you see the impact of election on advertising? What is going to happen? What changes going to happen? Or what advertisers needs to do during this election period? Would you like to highlight?
Well, thank you, Nitin. Well, the experience for brands and the advertising sector really has always been that once advertising once the election is coming up, brands tend to take the back seat, leaving the stage, and understandably so. The approach is always wanting to avoid clutter or not to be seen as partisan. But I dare say that with the level of disruption we are seeing in the media space these days, nobody's going to keep quiet for you to be heard. So you need to find a way to raise your voice. And I think it's becoming increasingly important because when you look at the media space right now, even the political parties are not playing at the level one would have expected them to play. Yeah. Listen to radio, watch TV. I mean, but in fact, interestingly too, some TV channels have actually said clearly that they are not even accepting political hard, meaning clearly that the eyeballs we are looking for will be there because during election, you know that some people will stay at home, some people will live comfortably in areas like Lagos and wanting to monitor events back in their home state and all of that. So meaning the eyeballs will be there. But the question will now be, how will brand be deliberate, intentional, and purposeful in their approach in a way that they communicate and engage them constructively? And I think that's where the challenge really is. But for them to stay off totally, for me personally, I think it's not the best time to stay off clearly, because the question you ask yourself is that during the election, does it mean people don't brush their teeth anymore? Toothpaste will still there. Does it mean they don't eat anymore? They will still eat. So you don't expect the politician to keep quiet for you to be heard. You just need to find a way and to be strategic in how you place your heart and know where to place it. News is really going to be a fundamental and a good selling point during this election period, because most people will want to keep abreast of development, even in areas where they are not located. So they want to see what's happening around the cities and all of that. So all these are things that brands need to put on their creative and strategic cap to look at where do we play without really going under the radar. Because the implication of going under the radar is the fact that the Gen Z we are talking about, the youth that most brands want to address, these are people who are so impatient. They don't have any form of loyalty. They see you are doing what they like, they gravitate towards you. You are no longer on the scene, they move on with the next available trend. So we need to be very strategic, purposeful, and intentional about how we navigate. We are not there. Brands should not go into that mode of keeping quiet, because really, the politicians will do their own, the brands too must carry on. And also, this is happening during the fourth quarter, which happened to be our busiest period. This is when spending is at its peak. Yeah. So why would brand wants to take off at this time? I think it's important for brands to be strategic and purposeful in their approach at this period. Thank you.
No, I think it's very important, the point what you mentioned. This election, the viewership impact going to go high. A lot of people will have time to watch TV particularly. So I'm sure it will be beneficial for the brand. Even those brands who are not advertising on news platform, they might advertising. There's opportunity for them to advertise. So I think I completely agree with you. Thank you. Wow, there are many questions coming here.
Yeah, there's a question.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just, I don't know if we have time for it.
Yeah, I would like to take one last question. I know people are interested and there are many questions coming, but because of the timing, I think we should close on time. So maybe my last question to Patrick, and which is interesting, about attention planning, Patrick. Why is this important for advertisers? Somebody is asking about this. Would you like to address?
Okay, interesting question, and thanks for that. Let me address this question in 3 parts: why, what, and how. The why is very important, and more in what we got to deliver. So, as media or a digital agency, we got to deliver outcomes and not outputs to our clients. and outcomes really matter, the most for the advertisers and clients that we work for. So it's really about how and where we can enhance the value by paying attention to so-called attention, which is driven by data, which is driven by planning science, guiding media investment, essentially to deliver on objectives. So that's really the why part of attention is important. Now, the what part, what part is equally important, which is again, attention. As a media agency or a digital agency, we need to be very sure that we are able to interpret that in a number of ways, which can basically, is driven through a variety of actions. So there are various ways. For example, environment. Environment matters the most. Simply look at it from the World Cup perspective. Watching at home versus watching outside. The environment does matter. Transit media, consuming, maybe mobile content in transit while at home, while wherever you are, has a different impact and different attention span. And we've seen that coming out of today's presentation. The devices do matter. This World Cup, we've seen many people actually preferring to watch them on maybe their mobile devices and so on and so forth versus the traditional way of watching on television. And that does matter because there's a lot of distractions, so to say. When you're watching on mobile, you're not going to be focused only on that. You're going to be distracted in various other things. Creative does matter. Of course, there were mentions of short form. I have a different view. I think it's a combination of both short form and long form. Both work, provided they're able to catch consumers' attention. So even a long form content which is able to strike an emotional chord with the consumer in the early frequencies is going to be more attention grabbing and versus maybe the frequencies at the later stage. So maybe the frequencies of 1, 2, and 3 for a long form creative, which is going to be striking that emotional chord, will definitely have that attention versus maybe the subsequent frequencies. And many, even if you look at it from a creative perspective today, I think when you watch reels on Instagram, at the back end, the algorithm is curating the content the way you want to see it, and that's sort of basically ensuring that they're able to spend more time on Instagram reels and so many things which are happening knowingly, unknowingly from the back end and curating content. So that is also maybe one way of looking at it. Audience is again equally important, and I call this audience a very important part because in media planning we typically consider media aperture, which is basically the moment of when is the available audience, when is the audience going to be available to me, and how do I ensure that the moment of truth is something which I'm able to identify. So that is basically for me the deal which I would want to strike, saying that if I'm talking about a coffee brand, I would want to definitely do maybe a food brand. I know the housewives or maybe whoever I want to talk to, I have the undivided attention. So maybe the attention index at that point in time is much more higher versus maybe prime time. Yes, prime time does give you higher ratings, but definitely not higher attention index and many other things. So that audience understanding is equally important, the way you kind of split it, the way you kind of segment it, them in buckets, whatever you call it, the lifestyles or psychographics or whatsoever, you're able to understand. And finally, mindset is also equally important. What mindset, at what phase are you talking about?
Absolutely.
These things matter. So maybe just to recap it about environment, devices, creative, audiences, and mindset. So that's basically the what part of it. And then how do we do this? Again, $1 million question. At Omnicom, we have Omni. Omni has a module or an app which is basically called the Channel Planner. So Channel Planner allows us, and we kind of at Omnicom have invested a lot of time and effort in understanding a lot about attention, right? So when I say Channel Planner, channel basically means a medium, it could be digital, television, it could be radio. Then you get into maybe the sub-channels. For example, I'm talking about digital, then digital have various things. For example, Instagram, what am I talking? Am I talking the feed? I'm talking about the reels, YouTube. Am I talking about the skippable, unskippable? Am I talking about the YouTube watch? Am I talking about the home screen, etc., etc.? Everything has a different attention, score, and that attention score is what gets fed into what we call as the omni-channel planner, which allows you to basically create various scenarios. Because ultimately you have to deliver outcome. That is the thing that you have to deliver. Every channel or a sub-channel has a different influence score. Okay, from an attention point.
Absolutely.
And therefore, our objective is to keep the budget constant, and keeping the budget constant, we evaluate various scenarios, and that various scenarios, what we ultimately focus is not on reach only, but we focus on reach, which is of course something that's very important for many advertisers. But for us, what is equally important is to deliver outcome. and not outputs in terms of reach,
Yeah.
or focus definitely on the influence score. So what is my influence score for scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3? And that is very important for us. So the why, what, and how is equally important, because as the agencies, who are basically custodians of various brands, for various clients that we work for, the why is the key, and therefore the what is something which we have to orchestrate, saying that, okay, these are things I would want to straddle between, and how we already have a solution by way of Omni, which is a global tool, which is got omni-channel manner. And specifically, I think OMD design, OMD has where you're able to, from the OMD design point of view, I guess you can put influence scores as well as or into the attention scores, and that basically helps you choose. I think that's really the answer to the question.
No, thank you, Patrick. I think you cover, you mentioned mindset, you mentioned reach and frequency, and how it can, I like the way you said why, what, and how. I think those things are very important. Okay, guys, I think we should close on time. So what I would thank you very much. First of all the speakers, I really thank you for having fantastic presentation. Thank you to Dr. Uche particularly for having this collaboration with OMD, Dr. Uche. Thank you to Matt for accepting our invitation and collaborating with us once again. And thank you to all the speakers, and my special thanks to panelists and our audience. I hope I could see a lot of questions, but sorry guys, due to the time will not permit us. But if any questions we would like to address, we will do that. You can put your emails and we are happy to address those. And definitely a lot of people are asking for the document presentation. We will talk to LBS and we will see how we can manage and how we can share that with you. To this note, I close this presentation webinar, and once again thank you very much and have a lovely week. Bye.
Excellent. Thank you all. Well done.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Welcome to Media Reach OMD Nigeria and West Africa. We are a media advertising agency delivering integrated marketing communication solutions to our clients globally. OMD has the world's largest global media network with presence in over 100 countries. As per Convergence, that tracks global Marcom industry, ranks OMD as #1 with 11.5% share of media buying globally and 13.2% share of media buying in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. On the local level, Media Reach OMD Nigeria has consistently ranked #1 since the RECMA audit kicked off in 2011. In Ghana, we are ranked close #2 with 17% share of media buying. At the global level, we work with the Act Fast model. This model provides global learnings for local talents across EMEA offices, helping our people to learn faster than our competitors and to act faster upon these learnings. We are a people of ideas, driven by the best-in-class technologies with key focus on outcomes and return on investment. In an effort to make better decisions faster, we create more valued and valuable relationships. Our tools and processes, which is delivered via OMD Design and enabled by Omni, focuses on delivering positive outcomes to our clients objectively. OMD Design is a process consisting of 4 key guardrails that enable every brief set to meet its business needs and increase accountability. It commences with ambition, setting ourselves up to win by defining and aligning on business goals and where the associated growth will come from. Then moves through empathy, deciding on who we need to target and what communications need to do to achieve the previously defined business goals. Then continues with craft, designing the corresponding plan required to successfully connect with and persuade our defined audiences. And the final step of activate. Activating and continually optimizing our plan to dynamically drive performance and learn from the future activity. OMD Design has 20 modules or decisions to help us deliver against those stages. These stages have powerful apps and tools that integrates with Omni. An integration of our platform, which is Omni, and process, which is OMD Design, helps us deliver our brand promise of better decisions faster. Each OMD has represented Nigeria for the 9th time at the Cannes Lions Festival globally. As a leading agency in West and Central Africa, Media Reach OMD has 2 offices in Nigeria, which started business in 1999, expanding our coverage into Ghana and Cameroon, which were established in 2007 and 2012 respectively. We further expanded our coverage into the Francophone countries by partnering with Harmonies in 2015. Based on this, we have coverage in 24 countries across West and Central Africa, thereby adding value to our existing and potential clients. We have a strong workforce of over 130 expertise working to create long-lasting partnerships with our clients ranking from global, regional to local clients. We handle diverse clients across different sectors. Global clients like Google, Uber, regional clients like Airtel, which is one of the biggest telecom companies in Nigeria, with DigitX Plus, a related business and a digital marketing agency offering a full service spectrum with a circle of advantage designed to deliver on clients' objectives with paid media management, social media marketing, creative development services, and content marketing. As a leading agency, we have also pioneered thought leadership in the industry through syndicated tools like AMPS and Diaries. We also offer local proprietary tools by conducting local research like Nigeria Media Index, Ramadan research to gain insight into consumer behavior pre and during Ramadan, print readership survey to get in-depth understanding and insight into newspaper and magazine readership habits. OMD has bespoke products like the Media Factbook and the use of global tools like Omni, Budget Planner, Channel Planner, and other digital tools. Our media buying and procurement principles is to ensure that we offer value to the client by giving best price, added value, and media innovation for our clients. Media Reach OMD further adds value to the clients by organizing an annual media appreciation program, offering Media Lens dashboard and establishment of Media Lab. The publication of the Media Factbook for over a decade is one of our pioneering efforts to deliver best-in-class products. This covers 23 countries in West and Central Africa. They are also available on Google Play and App Store. OMD is digitally inclusive to deliver an integrated marketing communications. Media Reach OMD, offering better decisions faster. Media Reach OMD.